As we've seen in the last video, there are several different ways of thinking about how many continents there are, with the most widespread models ranging from 5 to 7 continents. However, in most English-speaking countries, as well as in other nations around the world, the 7-continent model is taught. Using this model, the continents of the world, in order of size, are Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Antarctica, Europe, and Australia. Compared to the other continents, Australia is quite small, with even the tiny Europe being 1.32 times bigger. Also, unlike Eurasia, Africa, and the Americas, Australia is unconnected to the other landmasses, but despite this, it's still considered a continent instead of being a massive island. Because of this, the title of World Biggest Island goes to Greenland, found sitting on the opposite end of the world. And this begs the question, why is Australia a continent and Greenland an island? As it turns out, there are no official conditions that each continent has to meet in order to be considered a continent, which explains why there are so many different models of thinking when it comes to how many continents there are. However, there are several largely accepted factors that classify different regions of the world as continents. These factors include historic recognition, size, tectonic independence from other continents, unique flora and fauna, cultural uniqueness, and local belief in continental status. Australia was discovered during the Age of Sail, making it seem a lot bigger at the time than it might seem today. At the time, sailing around the island could take months of continuous sailing, and for the Dutch and British explorers who mapped the continent, this would be comparable to sections of other continents they would have passed on the way. The British explorers might have subconsciously compared the size of Australia to the British Isles and concluded it was a continent rather than an island. Greenland, on the other hand, at the time was never explored in the same way, due to glaciers and the harsh conditions of the region. While Australia is significantly larger than Greenland, Greenland often appears larger in maps because of the distortion caused by proximity to the North Pole. Australia is 7.7 million kilometers square in size, making it 3.6 times the size of Greenland, which is 2.16 million kilometers squared. This is a considerable difference, but it doesn't seem that stark when Greenland is compared to the second largest island, New Guinea, which is 2.8 times smaller at 785,000 kilometers squared, or when compared to a large island like that of Great Britain, which is 10 times smaller than Greenland at 209 kilometers squared. Australia rests on its own tectonic plate called the Australian Plate. Greenland, on the other hand, sits on the North American tectonic plate, meaning it is not geologically separate from Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Australia certainly has its own unique flora and fauna, with native animals like kangaroos, wombats, and Tasmanian devils, and so forth, and these are not found elsewhere in the world. In contrast, Greenland has 15 unique species of plants, but its fauna such as reindeer, polar bears, Arctic foxes, and so forth can be found elsewhere, such as in Canada. Australia's historic Aboriginal culture is also quite unique. The country is also more Western in ideology than most other countries in the South Pacific, making it a unique culture in its geographic area. The locals consider themselves to live on both an island and a continent, fulfilling the last of the criteria. Meanwhile, Greenland does not have its own distinct culture. It's considered part of the larger North American Arctic culture. And finally, Greenlanders, for the most part, do not believe that they live in a continent, and they consider themselves to be islanders. In conclusion, these definitions of a continent are shaky at best, as for instance, looking at a map of tectonic plates, you can see that Europe sits on the Eurasian tectonic plate, along with most of Asia, so only cultural difference and a feeling of separateness makes it a separate continent. Similarly, India has its own tectonic plate as well, but in this case, a sense of similar culture and flora and fauna makes India part of Asia rather than its own continent. It seems that to be a continent, an area must fulfill most of this unofficial criteria, and in this case, Australia succeeds where Greenland does not, drawing a line between what makes the smallest continent and the largest island. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to support the show, please share this episode on sites like Reddit and Facebook, as that really helps out. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Thanks again.